This is Janet.
Janet stays in things that are bad for her every single day. Even though she can afford to move, she stays in an area in a neighborhood that she does not like.
The ghetto!
She stays in a relationship that keeps her in tears, and no, I do not mean tears of joy. And she keeps pouring money into a business that has been operating at a loss for the past decade. And this weird control over her that keeps making her do things that she doesn't want to do or doesn't like anymore is something that we have seen a lot of the time in history with countries too.
During the space race in the Cold War, there were a few countries that really tried their best to be the first country to build a successful and economically viable supersonic commercial jet. America tried, but failed. Russia tried too, and also failed. But then came France and the UK with the supersonic jet that could fly twice the speed of sound. It was honestly a supersonic masterpiece. It was more expensive than anyone imagined, and it was getting passengers from London to New York so quick that you couldn't even get through watching the end of Wolf of Wall Street.
Yet one of the biggest failures in aviation history. But what is this cognitive bias, and how and why does it have so much control over Janet's awful decisions? And how does it have so much power that it keeps governments pumping millions into sinking projects? And most importantly, how can we avoid it in our own lives?
I have spent over 40 days researching this phenomenon so that you can easily digest it in under 10 minutes.
Let's go. This is Richard Taylor.
He's cited as one of the key figures who identified and explored the sunk cost fallacy, particularly in his 1980 paper. He wrote that the sunk cost fallacy is the situation in which people make decisions based on the money, time, or effort that has already been invested into that thing, instead of basing their decisions on the best current course of action going forward. He kind of explained that we focus way too much on what we have spent time, money, or effort on, and it's this overemphasis on all of these sunk costs that can lead us into sticking with failing projects, investments, and relationships.
He has a pretty famous theatre ticket example.
Imagine you bought a $100 ticket to a show, but on the day of the event, you're sick, you've had a bad day, the weather's horrible, or you just genuinely do not want to go anymore. Most people will feel like they have to go so that the money isn't wasted. But Taylor, he pointed out that the money is already gone.
Going doesn't get the money back. In fact, it might just make you miserable. So let's go back to the space race.
Developing the first supersonic passenger airline was not an easy task, but it was kind of important in winning one of the unofficial competitions of the Cold War, the space race. Much of it was about showing off how technologically advanced your nation was, and also showing off its military strength. And in this particular race to develop the first successful supersonic passenger jet, Russia entered the chat first. Russia came in swinging with their Tupolev Tu-144. I probably absolutely butchered that, but we're gonna move on. However, there were a few issues with their jet. The jets experienced a lot of crashes, a lot of design inadequacies, and operational failures that couldn't sustain it, so it just failed. America's version was riddled with high development costs, technical challenges, and a lack of commercial viability, and the government promised both Lockheed and Boeing that it would cover 75% of the research and development costs. And now, the UK/French mission was the Concorde. It technically won the supersonic airline race, but economically it was a massive fail. It was projected to cost around 70 million in 1962, but by 1976, this cost had exploded to between 1.5 and 2.1 billion. The craziest part was that they continued to pump money even when it was clear that this project was doomed to fail.
Because of the amount of time, money, and effort that had gone into it, and they kind of felt like it'd be a whole waste. It'd be a waste of that time, that money, and that effort if they were to stop now without seeing the fulfillment of that project. But what they failed to realize, and what they kind of just didn't want to understand is that at the point in which they realized that this project is doomed to fail, any more money, any more effort, any more time that they put into it was the real waste. Everything that they continue to put in, that was the real loss. It's the same thing with Janet. She feels like she cannot leave her relationship, despite how horrible her boyfriend is and despite how unhappy she is. But ultimately, you're wasting your future time, your future investment, your future money and effort by not upping and leaving. If you are continuing an act at the expense of your joy, fulfillment, or your future, then you've already lost. 1. Take your wins and move on. We need to kind of reconfigure our minds and look at things differently, change our perspectives. That career that you dedicated yourself to for X amount of years, you learned so much. That was not a waste.
You learned how to think critically, how to work with people, how to prioritize systems and automation. You found out how money works, how finance and procurement work too. You met your lifelong friends, supporters of the next stage of life that you're going into, perhaps your partner, your future employees, your future boss, future investors and destiny helpers. You learned how to communicate with people and understand how people work. So it was never a waste. It was a beautiful experience, a solid foundation that can propel you to new heights with your next idea.
Number 2, take the losses and move on. Just learn from them. Let's have a more agile approach to life.
I'm Prince 2 Agile certified, and when I was doing the course, I realized more and more the importance of learning from previous models, learning from previous mistakes, making iterations, learning from those mistakes and making iterations again. Yes, relationship A didn't work out, but you can still learn from it. Inspect what went wrong, learn from the failures in that relationship, adapt and make the changes and then repeat. Every failed project or relationship is just a backlog of lessons. Don't see it as just because you've spent years in that horrible relationship that you should continue. We can cut our losses short and learn.
Number 3, review. Doing something as small as reviewing your progress incrementally, periodically, however you want to say it, over time, I think will help with both the first step and the second step.
I honestly think that regular progress reviews, whether that's done each Sunday, every end of the month, or even at the end of the quarter, can be quite helpful in allowing us to identify issues early so that we don't end up in a situation where we are just pouring billions into a failing project. And it also allows us to prioritize consistent improvement as opposed to clinging on to failing investments that we made in the past.
Just because you've put in time, money and effort into something, it doesn't mean you have to stay there. At the point that you realize it's not good for you, it doesn't mean you have to stay there, because that is literally just falling into the sunk cost trap. Being aware of the potential trajectory of that thing that you've invested in will help you make healthier, wiser, smarter decisions that are based on your future as opposed to your past. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that after watching this, you can realize that if you have put in time, effort and money into something that is no longer serving you and you can tell that it's not going to serve you anymore in the future, I hope this has served as some sort of encouragement to just sever that tie, sever that thing now. Cut your losses early and move on. But yes, on this channel, we are all about history, we are all about economics, public policy, psychology, history, geopolitics, all that good stuff, just to understand not only more about the world around us, but to understand more about ourselves and how we can make small improvements based on that knowledge and understanding. Bye!